Dan with Guardian Mold Prevent here. I wanted to do a video today to show you some of the reasons why attic spaces end up with mold growth and some of the options that we offer our customers to solve those mold problems in the attic space. We're looking here at a house that has a definite mold problem up in the attic. We're looking at the underside of the roof sheathing and also the rafters, and you can see that there's black discoloration that has developed on the underside of the roof. This is a conventional framed roof, so you'll notice that there's regular rafters in here with some collar ties, and then there's plywood sheathing over the top of them. And essentially what has happened here is that this person put their house on the market for sale. They had a buyer come in. That buyer brought a home inspector with them. The home inspector did a home inspection and came up with a list of things that were to be corrected, and one of them is possible mold growth or a mold-like substance, which is about as far as a home inspector can note without actually testing the mold. Now the second attic we're going to show you, just for example's sake, is a truss attic. It's got engineered trusses as rafters. Those are 2x4 rafters that are held together with steel plates. It's very common construction in our area because over the span of that truss, it holds a greater weight load, especially with the snow that we have in our winters. But you can see again that this is a home that was flagged by a home inspector because the underside of the plywood sheathing has some discoloration that's it's mold growth, and it's caused by deficiencies in two areas. They're the most common areas, and that's the insulation and the ventilation, and either one of those items can be off or a combination of the two. Now let's look at a diagram rather quickly here of what your attic is meant to be constructed like. You can see at the ceiling you're meant to have a very thick, good insulation barrier to keep your house heat down and out of the attic. Your attic space is meant to be conditioned by the outdoor environment, which means that you have lower ventilation at your overhangs or the lower portions of your roof that allow for air to make its way up into the attic space, past the insulation, and then ultimately out through the top of the roof. When the winter time comes and your roofing members are ice cold, you want there to be ice cold air in the attic space. So the way to get the warm air out is to have sufficient insulation on your ceiling and proper airflow through ventilation. Now we'll look at some of the most common problems that we run across as to why you've got mold in your attic space, and most of them stem from ventilation and insulation deficiencies or insufficiencies. In this attic space that we're looking at on screen now, you can see that the insulation contractor who was brought in several years ago to insulate this attic space because the homeowner wanted to have good insulation and keep their house from conditioning the attic. The contractor came in, and what he did was he installed no baffles at the lower portions of the roof, which are U-shaped styrofoam pieces that go in to hold the insulation back. You may notice those in your attic space. In this case, they were not installed, but the insulation was actually blown right out so that it touches the edges of the roof. So in a case like this, when warm air does get in the attic space, there's nowhere for cold air to come up through the lower portions of the roof and force it so the air gets trapped. Another culprit we find so many times is the bathroom exhaust fans. Years ago, the contractors who built the houses did not worry about exhausting the bathroom fans out through the roof, and they didn't use insulated vent lines. So you can see here that this happens to be a chintzy white vinyl line that loses heat, but it also is not connected to the roof. So all your shower, moist air, warm air comes up into the attic space and gets dumped right against all the plywood sheathing and the wood members of the roof. Another item that we see on a very regular basis is that homeowners have second-story additions done. Those second-story additions need to be heated and cooled. And so what happens is that the home builder or the contractor puts a furnace in the second floor. And because all these fittings are not perfect and they're not airtight, you end up losing a lot of heat into your attic space. And ultimately, the reason we're trying to keep heat out of the attic space is because when that warm air gets trapped up against the ice cold roofing members, primarily in the winter time, you end up reaching dew point and condensating and getting mold growth, much like if you took an ice cold can of pop out of your refrigerator and set it in a warm room. You'll get condensation all around it because the temperature differential causes that condensation to develop. Another item we see on a regular basis is a whole house fan. Usually they're found in hallways, and they're fans that were installed years ago to be kicked on, and the louvers on the underside of the fan in the ceiling when you're looking up from the hallway side open up. The fan kicks on and it draws the house heat up into the attic space and moves the air. And they're usually only used in the summertime, but what ends up happening is that when you're heating your house in the winter, the heat still makes its way up through those louvers and into the attic space. And we've seen a lot of creative ways how homeowners insulate these fans, but usually it's very ineffective. Another item that we see on a regular basis is people storing their personal belongings up into the attic space. Your attic space is truly not meant to be a place for storage. Now, we can sympathize with you, and we understand that many homes don't have basements, so they're very limited in their storage space. But when you put items in your attic in a space that's meant to have continuous airflow, you end up blocking that airflow, and ultimately, when you do that, you cause problems for yourself that lead to condensation. Now, lastly, we want to look at, this is a brick bungalow in the city, and you can look at the very lower portions of the roof where the gutters are. There are actually no overhangs on this roof. So there are no lower vents and no place for cold air to get in. Now, your house may have an overhang, but what we find is one of two things. Either there's not enough ventilation cut into those overhangs, or when the vinyl or aluminum soffits are put in over the old wood, they get blocked because the contractor does not line up the perforated panels with the holes. Now, lastly, we'll talk about process. You can see we're looking at an attic space that has got a considerable amount of mold growth on the underside of the roof sheathing, and that we were called in to take care of the mold problem. So we came in this attic space and we treated it with a biocide, which is a product that kills mold on contact. We physically scrubbed it down, and then we put on our mold stain remover. It's a product that pulls about 80%, most of the time more, of the staining out of the plywood, and then we put a clear coat of an acrylic-based mold-resistant coating. Comes with a 10-year manufacturer's warranty on, and it's very aesthetically pleasing when we're finished. It looks like new wood, and it has a good protective barrier on it. When the homeowner opts to go with something other than the stain removal process, then we put on a white acrylic-based coating after the biocide has been applied and the scrubbing has taken place. This coating, again, is made for the mold remediation industry. It comes with a 10-year manufacturer's warranty, and it causes the attic space to be nice and bright and white. And most homeowners like it because they can actually see what was done and what was warranted. But the difference between the two processes is simply in the area of aesthetics. One is white and one is clear with clean wood exposed.